You spend time with your family?
Sure I do.
Good. Because a man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man.
This guy is Italian, and in his native language, the word family would be
Famiglia.
on the other side of the Alps. The word is
Famille.
not too different from
Familia.
at the opposite end of Europe, somewhere near Ukraine. People say,
Familie.
why the similarity, you ask? A long time ago, these countries were all part of the same family that we now call the Roman Empire. During its existence, Rome was basically the USA equivalent of its time. Most people then thought Rome not only as a center, but the center. Repeat, the center of all known world. So as they say, all roads leads to Rome. And this is not your common cliche, because the Roman interstate was so good, so well engineered, that it practically had no equal. You can arguably say that Rome's greatness was built on their roads, due to the immense logistical advantages they provided. In war, logistics is everything, and in peace, you cannot become a world power with terrible logistics. The same thing holds true in biology, where logistics hold the keys to unlocking higher levels of existence.
Back when life was simple, there wasn't much to speak of in terms of logistics. You don't need roads for a neighborhood walk, and matter at the atomic level tends to move on their volition, as Einstein proved in 1905. Small cargo like oxygen can just walk themselves to wherever they need to go, but in some cases a little help would be cool. Jellyfish, for example, relies mostly on diffusion, in addition to being completely submerged in hospitable seawater. Despite a tendency to be very toxic, they are still a common delicacy in certain parts of the world, often sharing a table with these guys. Unlike jellyfish, bivalves do not bathe themselves in water as much, so there is a need for better logistics. Inside a clam is a clear division of labor. The gills exchange gases and trap food, the foot pushes everybody forward, and the heart pumps nutrients. Specifically, clams and their relatives don't have blood like we do. Internal organs are bathed in a liquid called hemolymph. Containing both vital cargo and garbage, the hemolymph has to flow, and the heart's rhythmic pumping creates that flow.
This type of circulation, or open circulation, is common among invertebrates, which tend to be of smaller size. A single, big road will do just fine if everyone still lives in close proximity, which is why fish hate this idea. When I was young, I disliked eating fish not because of the taste, but the bony parts that felt uncomfortable. As vertebrates, fish tend to be of larger size, rendering the hemolymph useless. Furthermore, fish organs are more sophisticated, and when you combine that with an active lifestyle, what we need is a regulated system that delivers the right amount of cargo to the right destination at the right time. What does this remind you of? Trains, because they only go where the tracks are. The solution is to restrict the flow of material to specialized vessels that can be checked, whether physically or chemically. In fish, blood goes through a loop between the heart, the gills and the organs, in that order. Arteries are primary vessels that carry blood away from the heart and feed into networks of small local vessels called capillaries. From these, primary vessels called veins return blood to the heart, where the cycle continues.
It's actually a good thing that 71% of the Earth's surface is ocean, because life on land is pretty hard, as proven by whales and dolphins. Out there, gravity is less of a problem, and you don't have to move as much for food. The physics of water allows for a decent amount of stability in terms of temperature and disturbance. Citizens of Bikini Bottom, for example, enjoy a relatively mild climate year-round, at least before Oppenheimer became Death, the destroyer of worlds. Evolution did not put much pressure on the single loop, so it stuck around. Don't get me wrong, this is very good, it's just that land hates this design. For one, gills don't work outside of water, lungs do. And since you only have one heart, it needs to create a pressure high enough so that cargo can reach your organs on time. That's the catch, terrestrial lungs won't handle this pressure, and so a single loop heart-to-heart will combust them.
Let's go back to trains for a little inspiration. Lungs can be compared to seaports, and the cargo in question is oxygen. When it comes to trains and ports, main lines don't often go directly by a port. It tends to happen that ports are connected to main lines with a separate branch. Just like your delicate lungs requiring an appropriate blood pressure, cargo in a port has specific needs as well. so it makes sense to keep that away from the already complex logistics of the main line. In the context of the body, it meant having a separate circulatory loop for the lungs. This led to the heart gaining the left atrium, which prepares the newly oxygenated blood for the main circulation, the main line. Double circulation is what most land vertebrates agree on. Even the ones that left for the seas still retain it to this day, and that says a lot.
Right below the atria is where disagreements began. You see, solutions do not guarantee the end of problems. They just generate problems that are harder to solve. The double loop is still a remarkable feat of engineering, but deoxygenated blood from the right atrium and oxygenated blood from the left atrium still share a single ventricle. Since the ventricle is responsible for the chief drive, it means that the trains would be carrying both empty and full containers. We refer to this kind of blood as mixed blood, a trademark of reptiles and amphibians. Another thing you should keep in mind, perhaps something that these guys are better known for, is being cold-blooded. That doesn't mean they are evil, they just peg their body temperature to that of the surrounding environment. If a lizard wants to be hot, it doesn't have to create the heat itself. A good sunbathing would do. So for them, the lower oxygen isn't that much of a problem. But for birds and mammals, very much. We need to be hot at all times, even when we sleep and even when the sun isn't there.
Maintaining the heat is extremely important considering our organs' complexity. A reliable source of energy must be available, and energy goes hand in hand with oxygen. What is the solution? Do we build more tracks? Do we buy more trains? How about both? With a simple but elegant maneuver, nature showed its chilling creativity just by building a wall in the middle of the ventricle. Once again, the divide and conquer doctrine works, as shown previously with the separation of pulmonary and systemic circulation. Separating oxygen-poor and oxygen-rich blood maximizes efficiency, staying true to the principle of the right amount of cargo to the right destination at the right time. And that, roughly speaking, is how the vascular system evolved, from zero to hero.
Like I said, if your design is good enough, evolution won't delete you. But I think all of us understand that good enough doesn't always translate to perfection. One thing that keeps me awake at night is that when you bleed heavily, the heart actually picks up speed and accelerates that bleeding, kind of like a nuclear bomb. At certain parts of the circulatory system, like for example the aortic arch, special receptors monitor blood pressure with a view to keep that figure at a reasonable level. When you bleed, blood pressure plummets, reducing the number of signals baroreceptors sent back to the control room, the nucleus tractus solitarius. And just like Dyatlov telling Akimov to raise the power, the NTS immediately orders everyone to raise blood pressure. The heart starts beating faster as the vessels constrict themselves, with both processes bolstered by the increased adrenaline and noradrenaline coming from the adrenal medulla. This commonly happens in fight or flight situations, but if you are suffering from severe bleeding, try your best to minimize unnecessary movement.
But your circulatory system isn't just good enough, it's pretty awesome, man. Particularly in the way it supplies the brain, which at 2% of your body weight consumes 20% of the oxygen. Neurons die quickly without oxygen, so blockages can cause significant damage, especially in the right places. At the base of your brain, several important arteries join to form not a junction, but a roundabout named after Thomas Willis, an English physician who described the structure of the brain much better than I do in his book Cerebri Anatomy. A top-tier solution both for blood and for cars, a roundabout elegantly reduces congestion and gives more route choice, offsetting the severity of a random blockage event. If the human body was designed by someone, they must have been a genius. In planning our cities and infrastructure, much inspiration can be derived from this ingenuity.
Regarding the creation of the circulatory system, perhaps the most legendary logistical feat ever, spanning over 60,000 miles, is humans. Lu Xun put it best. In his 1921 work, My Old Home, Lu commented on the sordid state of his native China, though what he saw visiting his childhood village. At the end of the story, he wrote,
I thought, Hope cannot be said to exist, nor can it be said to not exist. It's just like the roads across the earth. For actually, the earth had no roads to begin with. But when many men pass one way, a road is made.
Animal had no blood vessels to begin with, but when the unforgiving force of evolution forced them to innovate and adapt to ever-changing situation, a miracle was made. Often we have a goal in mind without actually knowing where to go and what to do. In other words, we don't know the way. But you don't have to, because the way only shows itself when you start walking. The more you walk, the clearer the path becomes. I hope that this video, in one way or another, helped you find your way in this world of ever-changing circumstances, and if so, thank you for watching.